Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Callow's drinking coffee this morning, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. What's up?
What's going on? Why do you, is that a shock or something? Like, is that okay?
Just observational. That's all.
I mean,
Observational this morning.
do you not make your own coffee? You just go to, various establishments right down the street. Yeah, there you go. There it is.
Yeah. Nah, no. I don't know how to make good coffee.
Oh,
That's the
really?
problem.
Okay. It's not.
That's the problem. That's the real problem. Like every coffee machine I've ever had, when it comes out of it's terrible. And then, do I want to do a French press? Okay, so that would be the every once in a while I'll do it that way. Otherwise, all my favorite places are right down the street.
No, that's fair because you do realize you are once again full old man. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just gonna get coffee just to get out of the house.
it's going in that direction. There's a lot of things that I've noticed that are going in that direction.
Where do you buy your Washington Post in the morning? Because you're right there. You're right there, dude.
Pretty close. Yeah. If those still existed, I would probably buy them. Yes.
I'm just saying you're right there. You want my secret? I have two little secrets. I could either do a pour over, which is pretty easy to make a good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Or what I learned was with ground coffee, you do like 2 dashes of cinnamon, a little bit of salt, and it just completely changes the complexion of your cup of coffee when you put it in the grounds.
You young people are confused me.
That wasn't even complicated. It's two little things.
Coffee's fine the way it is.
Yeah, God.
I like mine burnt and black.
Yeah, that's right.
Shut up. I don't want to put your spices in it. No.
By the way, I do know because we record now and you aren't in Friendship Heights as much, you're missing out. The Dunkin' at the Friendship Heights Metro. The Dunkin' at the Friendship Heights Metro is open now. Just saying.
That is life changing. And it's actually that's a lure to come back. It's a lure to come back.
Yeah. Yes. So
no, I like my new schedule. I do it out of either, as you can tell, my house, if you're watching this on YouTube. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast or on the radio, we do put a lot of these on YouTube at Empire Media, the YouTube page. You can watch it there if you want to, see how we're looking in the morning. Got my Commander's hat on, feeling all week one-y. I can't wait.
It's cold out. It's cold out, so we're busting caps gear out. So yes.
Picking up my boards today to get ready for week one. Back in the groove. Yeah. Got a couple long nights ahead of me. I'm getting ready. I'm already doing the groundwork. I'm worried about wide receiver 3 for the Buccaneers surprising us. You think we got surprises for them? They got a little surprise for us.
Okay. All right then.
So I'm already on top of it. They got this wide receiver 3 who's a rookie, 3rd round pick by the name of Jalen McMillan, who they apparently, according to my sources, have been hiding all summer. Like he's the one that's going to be the over-the-top guy with Godwin and Evans, and they don't want the world to know that. And he was overshadowed because he played with a Dunze at Washington. So there's so it looks like our guy Sandra still is going to get tested in week 1 is my early Wednesday note for all of you out there. That it sounds like Sandra still's going to meet his match rookie v rookie of this Sunday. So we'll see.
So they're Terry is what you're basically
they
saying.
Have apparently they're very high. Well, everybody, that's what this is this time of year. Everybody's very high on their new guys. That's their guy I've heard about they've been hiding during the summer going, we have a hit here in this guy. And considering you have to deal with Evans and Godwin to start with, good luck with him. So I'll be watching that guy.
Got it. So take the over on Sunday.
I don't know. I heard it's going to be high 80s humid and rain. So I don't know about that one.
Okay.
Actually.
All right. Fair enough.
Sounds like the weather's going to be very Florida this weekend. We're going to get very Florida. So we'll see. All right. Let's go through some of the stuff that came out yesterday. Brandon Coleman is left tackle 1 on the depth chart, the official one. I get to actually say it finally, not the unofficial depth chart, the official one. Dan Quinn speaks today obviously the show's on at 11, so we don't know what he says yet. He will be asked about this. And so I'll be waiting to hear what he has to say about it. But if you put him there, then you put him there. And I assume the intention is, yes, a third-round pick who did not play a single snap in the preseason starts at left tackle with your rookie quarterback this Sunday. How about that?
This is full-blown, here we go, Jim. I mean, that is, birth by fire for him and Jaden Daniels. If I had to guess, Cliff Kingsbury is going to do a lot of rolling out to the right to start the game probably, or movement to the right to try to just ease up on him. But yeah, this is birth by fire for both of them to start things off.
Well, it's actually interesting you point that out, because if you remember, and because I have to pay attention to the preseason like nobody has to pay attention to the preseason, in the first preseason game, one of the things that really actually stood out to me, which is, and this is unusual to say in a preseason game, I liked the way that Kingsbury called it. And a lot of it was what you're talking about, trying to start drives by getting his quarterback out of trouble, rolling him out, get some easy plays, few easy yards, get ahead of the sticks, be in second and short, don't have to do it by running every single time, catch a team off guard, think about who they're playing this weekend. They're going to blitz, we think, because that's their history. Like, I don't think Todd Bowles goes all prevent defense all of a sudden, like at this point in his career. So we might see a little bit of that. The play action, the rollout, show off the legs a little bit, try to get them off kilter, maybe get them a step slower early in the game, let them react a little bit more than just go, go, go. So I wouldn't be surprised, actually. You see a little of that play action, waggle, roll out to the right away from it. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of that this Sunday.
No, I think that's actually should be the game plan, and then hopefully you ease them up, and then I'm going to guess they're going to try to go a heavy dose of Brian Robinson. That's going to be my guess, but
yes, I think so too. I actually think we're getting a heavy dose of Brian Robinson in 2024. If you ask me, I think. But this could be. I've had 2 years of it where, well, the first year he had the incident at the end of the summer. He wasn't playing till the middle of the year, but by about towards the end of it, when we knew he was fine and he started to get back to relative 100% health, it became clear they needed to use him a lot more. And then last year was ridiculous what ended up happening. So I'm hoping we don't have year 3 where we're in December going, I think number 8 should have got the ball more. But I have a feeling that that's the direction we're going to go, is that you're going to feed him a lot. I always everybody asks me about the fantasy stuff, with him. And I'm like, with the team. And I'm like, he's the one I would take at this point for stats. Like, I don't know who, outside of Terry, who the heavily targeted receiver is going to be. I don't know if it's McCaffrey, Zacchaeus, Diami, Ertz, Sinnott. I don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you. Eckler could be. But, like, I think the sure thing is Robinson gets a lot of touches in games. That's my guess at this point, albeit saying that knowing I have not literally seen them run what I think is their offense yet. And I go to every practice, and I don't think I've seen it yet. So we'll be interested to see. Speaking of, so Luke and OZ high on the depth chart. De'Ami Brown, not number 2. I have a feeling I could guess that Quinn is going to say about this what he has said in the past, which is, we don't have a number 2 here. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything. And Luke and OZ's interchangeable there. He could be an outside receiver. He could be an inside slot receiver. McCaffrey probably works out of the slot more so, which means that you might call him number 2, but he's actually the starting slot receiver now that Jahan isn't here anymore, which signals Zacchaeus is more on the outside than on the inside. This is a whole lot of nothing. I think it's a long way of saying that this was a whole lot of nothing. And I expect Quinn to reiterate what he has said about this recently in the last few weeks, which is, okay, Terry's our number 1, but outside of that, we got a lot of guys and we are receiver by committee. So don't worry about the numbers around them.
No, and I also think you need to look at what have been Brown's biggest moments as a pro. It's when they kind of sneak him out there in the slot and he's not consistently on the field. Like, I think they're going to try to catch teams with Brown, because that's how he got the 2 touchdowns against the Titans that one game where they just sent him deep. Like, I think this is what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to mix it up, because they're going to try to kind of confuse whatever the defense is looking at. And then you've got a bunch of different matchups too, right? All 3 of them are different type of wide receivers. So you can't exactly keep up with them, is what I'm getting at. Like, this is what I've been saying about this regime, is that they're going to try to utilize these players to all of their best strengths and abilities. So I think what they're going to do is kind of rotate them in and out anyways. And maybe it becomes a tell but you can't have a tell in week 1, essentially. So I think they're going to try to rotate in.
The depth chart reading that way is a small tell to me. I think McCaffrey is a slot receiver for them, right? I don't think that Zaccheaus and Brown play a lot of snaps, both of them. Like, it signals not together, but that would make sense. Why would you ever take Terry off the field unless you had to, right? And there's really only room for 3. This also reads what I think is going to happen too, and I'll be, proven wrong potentially, but I don't think they actually run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, actually. Like, I actually think you're going to see a lot of 2 running back sets, and I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. They could run 3 tight ends with the group that they have. Sinnott, Bates as essential block. I mean, they could. I doubt it. Most teams don't do that, but it could, like their personnel reads that way. The tell to me on this one is, again, where I've been leaning. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more than people think. When they do throw, it probably is to secondary type targets like tight ends and running backs, and less to receivers. And that's how it reads to me. Because if you put Brown as a number 2, that reads outside of the building. He's your deep threat. By saying he's not even really a quote unquote starter, even though I think we know that he's going to play a ton, I think it is a bit of a tell, again, of where I've been kind of leaning this whole time. This is not a pass happy team. Don't perceive this Cliff Kingsbury offense as air raid or 4 wide receivers. I don't think so. So that's the tell to me in reading something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's why I'm saying, like, they're going to use each receiver to their best abilities, because they're not going to be throwing it that much. That, like, hey,
I agree.
When Brown is on the field, it's going to be like, oh crap, he's going to go deep, right? Or something along those lines. Like, I think that is how they're going to handle all these wide receivers. Like, it could be a decoy, obviously, but yeah, I think we kind of talked about this too in the first depth chart, not the first depth chart, but when all the cuts came out, and it was like, they have 4 tight ends. That means 2 of those tight ends are going to be on the field often, and they need backups for both of them. So yeah, I think it was already being told.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the questions to tackle and starting a rookie, Bates playing a ton, if for no other reason to have a 5.5, 6th offensive lineman out there seems logical to me. And if they are going to run the ball a lot, at least initially at the beginning of the season, then Bates is going to play a lot. So that means 2 tight ends, a lot, right? So we'll have to see what happens. The other one off the depth chart, and this was not a surprise, Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, cornerbacks 1 and 2. Michael Davis listed as the primary backup to both of them. And Mike Sandersill is listed as a starter, essentially, I think, at the slot. They didn't designate it that way, but I assume as the slot corner. So this one was not as fluid as I ever thought it was going to be. This is what it started with. This is where it stayed. I expected it to change like the receiver position did, where it'd get very fluid. It never actually did. So I do actually think that this is a signal that they are confident in them. That, like, I think all along we were waiting for the confidence to drop in both of them. This is a reaffirmation of what happened the whole summer, which was nobody beat them out. They got better, and we'll see if it's a vulnerable position, because it feels that way to me. It feels like it's a vulnerable position, but they won the jobs. And so that's where we are heading into the season.
I'm just going to go opposite here, because it's the first position group that I go, uh-oh. And I just think there's not anyone better. Like, they can be confident in those 2 guys to be 1 and 2, but I just think this is our first real situation of, this is the hand we've been dealt. These are the 2 best that we've got. We're going to see what we've got, come Sunday.
Yeah, there are, if you go back to the spring, the 2 things that I thought they would do outside of the 8 million things that they did to revamp the roster was they would go get a veteran tackle, and they would get a upgraded or quote unquote number 1 corner, because they had all of the cap room to potentially do it. In the number 1 corner realm, maybe there wasn't great ones available, but there were really good ones available, and they never did it. Like, they never went and did that. And then with tackle, I agreed that I wouldn't have overpaid for the ones that were available. Like when Adam Peters said last week, we're not collecting talent, we're trying to build a team. I fall in line with that too. I don't think you just pay somebody to pay, unless you're trying to go over the top and you're like, forget it, just get them. And that's not where we are. At least I don't think where this team is right now. So I agreed with that sentiment at the time that you don't go pay $25 million a year for Jonah Williams because you don't think he's a top tier tackle and he was the best available. But I thought a veteran would come in. That never happened. So those are the two things. And here we are with a 3rd round pick rookie left tackle starting. And this is the corner group because they won the job, but we'll find out, are they weak at the position or not? And it's going to happen very early and probably in week 1. That is a great set of receivers that they're playing in week 1. So we're going to find out.
Yeah, I mean, this defense's test this weekend is actually a very good one for the personnel that they're rolling out there. Like, I think we're actually going to get a very good look at how they react to things, how the coaching staff adjusts too. That's one thing that I think we all kind of forget. That's not something that they were great at, with the last regime. How do they adjust with some of this stuff? And once again, I'm interested to see how they rotate some of these players in. Like, yes, Forbes is starting, but I doubt he's going to play every snap, right? Like, I bet you they're going to rotate some of these guys through. So I just think it's just a good test to see how they're actually going to react throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's have a little bit of fun. Season starts this week. In fact, tomorrow we get Baltimore, Kansas City. Then we'll get the Brazil game Friday with the Eagles and the Packers before we head into the weekend. I don't know if you've read all the stuff with the Eagles. All the quotes are like, we've been told not to go outside. Yeah, this reminds me of like when we went to Japan years and years and years ago, and the State Department sat us down and said, here are all the things you really should know about and you cannot do, and here's what we can't help you with. Like, do not smoke a joint. If you do it, you will go to jail and we can't get you out. Like, just like little things like that. But this Brazilian one, like the Eagles are like outwardly saying, we're just basically being told, don't even go outside of the hotel because there's a lot of crime and we don't want to have an incident, obviously. And like, I saw some quote from Darius Slayer. He's like, I told my family not to come, like stuff like that. Like, that's how they're warning us about this. Anyway, let's have a little bit of fun. I want to project the whole season with the divisions tomorrow, since the season starts tomorrow, but let's just do the NFC East. Okay. Let's just do the NFC East with the Eagles starting and with the Commanders being, I would describe, a literal wild card coming into the season and hopefully a wild card at the end of the season. We'll see. So let's do it. What has to happen for them to make the playoffs or to be a viable contender for the division? 2 things. 1, Dallas has to go sideways, meaning 9 wins max, maybe under that. And it becomes like the AFC South last year where Jaden, like CJ Stroud's ahead of schedule. Dallas goes sideways because they're in some kind of weird reboot year and the karma's off and everything's weird. Like, what's going on? And then we need the Eagles to go the full Sirianni because that's the only way that I see it. And I'm going to read their schedules in a minute because I think there's like a path to some of this stuff. If Washington survives the first 6, which is 4 of the first 6 on the road and tough opponents, Baltimore, Cincinnati, West Coast trip. This weekend's a playoff team that they're playing. If they survive that to be, 3-3, something like that, then they're positioned for who of those 2 has already gone a little sideways and is in a hole. And that's what to me reads as the likely path to an outcome that might be surprising to everybody, which is they could be second place in the division. That's the outcome.
No, my whole mantra for this season is stay afloat. Just hover around 500, no more than 2 games under 500, stay afloat and then strike, because we say it every single year with this team, but they're never in the position. They get those divisional games at the end of the year. Like, it doesn't happen every year with any team, but we've seen it now. The NFL, as much as I hate it and it makes some of these divisional games useless at the end of the year, we've seen it, though, where the drama really drums up with some of the teams. Like we saw it a couple years ago with the Raiders and the Chargers, right? Remember that one went down to the wire and winner got into the playoffs, right? Like, I think what's happening here is if the Commanders are going to make the playoffs, they have to stay afloat and then win those last couple of games to kind of sneak in. You're right, though. One of those 2 teams has to go sideways for one of them to actually get in, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the only way. It can't be like the last couple of years where they're both double-digit win teams, and because I just don't think I don't think we're in position to keep up with something like that. And plus the math doesn't work. Like you don't typically have, it happens, but you don't typically have 3 10+ win teams in a division. It takes someone going the wrong way. Dallas seems more like the candidate to do it this year. Lost their defensive staff, lost a lot of people, seem particularly weak at certain spots. I don't know who their starting running back is right now. Like receiver wise, they're not as good as they were. Their offensive line took a couple of hits. Their defense isn't as good as they were. They should be good, but not as good as they were a year ago. Like it all smells. It stinks of they're not going to be a 12-win team, but are they going to be 7 or 8 is really the bigger, that's a sideways move for them. Like their roster's too good to be bad, in my opinion, but is it bad enough that this team can leapfrog them and bare minimum be second in the division? I see a path to that. And then more and more and more, I thought the Sirianni thing would just keep bubbling up and be like the anchor that weighs down Philadelphia. But if you follow them through the summer, I think they're beyond it. Like whatever happened last year, I think I don't know if fixed is the right word, but I have not seen the ongoing, and this is Philly, ongoing storyline of the team hates this guy. Like I don't see that. So maybe they are fine. And if you look at their roster, it's hard to pick against them it's really, really hard to pick against them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're past it until they start playing games. I'm not convinced that it's buried yet because you know how this works up in Philly. It's all fine until you start playing. If they start slow and lose a few, it's going to bubble up again. And specifically, if they lose and the offense looks wonky, I think that's really what it hinges on because we've had all this discussion with Jalen Hurts. Does he trust Sirianni? Does he like the play calling, whatever? I'm telling you, all they need is to lose a couple games and it's going to bubble back up. So it's fine now, but I think it's one of the storylines we have to watch through the whole entire season.
So they start in Brazil Friday to get Green Bay, which to me that's a toss-up. I mean, it's 2 playoff teams, and it's there. So, like, who knows, right? That's a who knows. Then they get Atlanta at home. See, I like car wrecks, as you know. That's one of them because they could easily be 0-1, right? Like, easily. And I wouldn't, if it's let's just assume it's a close game and they're playing in some stadium far, far away, and it's just a weird, and they're good. So it's just a weird game and they lose and they're 0-1. There's no reason, unless they lose bad, there's no reason to freak out, right? There shouldn't be a reason to freak out. But if they come home and they pull a Florida State and they lose to Atlanta and they're 0-2 and the fans are booing them and the post-game show wants to, go full public stoning, it could turn because they have 2 road games after that, at New Orleans, at Tampa, both of which would feel winnable, especially New Orleans. But you know how this goes. Like the pressure starts ramping up, and then all of a sudden it takes one bad play in a game, and A.J. Brown's having a freak out on the sideline, and it all just starts to unravel. So that's the pathway, is that they have to get off, in my opinion, to a bad start. They go down to Brazil and beat Green Bay and then go home and beat Atlanta. Even if they lose one of those next 2, it's no big deal. But if they somehow are 0-2 out of that, then we start finding out, are they going to unravel fast? And if that actually happens this year, then it's yet another pathway to a big surprise.
I think what happens here too is like, how does this team react to that ball being spread around? Because we know A.J. Brown was bitching about it last year, even though he was getting fed like crazy. Yeah. I already know how sports radio is going to go up there if they lose the first 2 games. It's going to be like Saquon only has 10 carries through the first 2 weeks of the season or something crazy like that. Like, I think this is what's going to actually kind of like start to unhinge them if they lose.
I'll give them credit here too. Like, that stuff can go the wrong way. They paid A.J. Brown. They paid Devontae Smith. They acquired Barkley and paid him a going rate. Like, I think it feels like they've quelled a lot of it. And if they can just kind of get through the early part of the season, even 2-2 through the first 4, because the weird Brazil game and 2 road games where they could lose either one of them, I think they're fine as long as they don't look the way they looked last year. Remember, early last year, they didn't look right. And everyone was saying it's going to happen. And it finally did, and it unraveled on them. So we'll see. The Giants, I'll just get through quickly. their schedule actually reads like they could get off to a decent start because they get Minnesota at home to start. Then they come here, and I'm sure that they're looking at it going, we could be 2-0. And I don't think that they're wrong because they don't know what we look like yet. And we're a young, very new team. Things then ramp up for them after that, where they've got to go to Cleveland, play Dallas, go to Seattle, play Cincinnati, play Philadelphia. And I don't buy them like a couple years ago. They clearly don't like Daniel Jones, which is a terrible place to be when you're just outwardly saying it all the time. I don't know who their playmakers are if Neighbors isn't great off the bat. I do think their offensive line should be a little bit better. And I think defensively, their front is formidable. And then I look at everything behind it and I go, house of cards. So if their front is not dominant, they have too many holes. And it's never a good place when you're scouting the best quarterbacks in week 1, when you just signed a guy to an extension and you just did a Hard Knock series where you told the world you kind of don't like him. So I expect them to not be, I don't know what the record will be, but I don't expect it to be very good, period.
No, they should definitively be the 4th place team. The only X factor here is I like Daboll. Like, I think if somebody can actually rally the troops for a couple wins, like he's the guy. And like, look, we were victims of it for the last couple of years. They beat this team easily with like backup quarterbacks often.
Cutlets.
So yeah, with your boy Cutlets and then Tyrod Taylor. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so that's where I'm with them. Like, I don't know. I like their grit. They should be 4th place, but it's not going to surprise me if they're flirting with the Commanders record too, if they just somehow kind of figure it out, because I like Daboll a lot.
I also think, like, in retrospect, that Hard Knocks thing does not look good. And if they end up with a 5 or 6 win record, I could see the Maras rewatching that going, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it wasn't good. It really wasn't good. All right. And then there's Dallas, who starts at Cleveland this weekend. Let's see if Dak gets a deal done. I'll get into that in a minute, but like, let's see if he gets something done. Then they get New Orleans. Then they get Baltimore. They should be 2-1 somehow. I don't think they will be. And that's all we need. We just need the cracks in the foundation to start early. And like, here's where I become a big fat Ravens fan. If the Ravens go down there and kill them, okay, right? That's all you need is one extremely embarrassing outcome early in the season. And the Ravens fit the bill for that, to go down there and win 42-14. And they're showing Jerry, and he's got this bewildered look on his face. And the interviews he does on sports radio are half in the barrel, and like, it's all, and then everyone's writing, see, they screwed it all up and they're messed up. This is where the Ravens could, I think, start the free fall. It screams to me that they could start the free fall if they blow them out somehow early in the season down there.
Don't forget, there's 2 factors here that I want to pay attention to, because I looked at their schedule as well yesterday on my show, but there's 2 factors here. One, Ravens fans travel really well. And like, I think we could get the crowd shots of like a bunch of purple in that stadium, because we've seen it years and years. People will go to Jerry World and take it over. No problem. And the Ravens fan base, I think, is probably the most underrated traveling fan base, maybe in the league. That's one. 2, a storyline that week, if they're not, humming along, is, Jerry did the whole, I want to be all in thing. And he didn't sign Derrick Henry, but he went to that team in Baltimore. Like, look for that to be the storyline that week as well. And watch, if Henry goes off, it's all going to come crumbling up. You said you were all in. You let this running back go to them. He beats you. Like, I'm just saying, there's going to be a bunch of factors that game if it all ends up falling apart.
Like, could they lose this weekend? Yeah, they're at Cleveland. They easily lose this weekend. Then they get New Orleans. They should win. If they're somehow 0-2 and Baltimore comes there and kills them, like, I think that's where it goes sideways. And that starts the path to maybe we're more in a 2-team race, not unlike what happened in the AFC South last year. Tennessee was rebooting. Indianapolis was rebooting. Jacksonville just ended up being average. It opened the door. That's what we need. We need Dallas to go sideways, the Giants to be average because they look like they're going to be, and Philadelphia to just not be great. And then all of a sudden the doors open. I'm not going to pick a record for this team because I don't know what they look like and it's too new. But I do see the pathways to, if they are very competitive, that everybody around them may shape what their outcome is. Honestly, that's where I've kind of landed on the whole thing.
Yeah, striking distance. That's all I'm pretty much saying throughout the year.
All right, take a quick break. Bram, what's the show? ESPN 630, Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bram, what's the show? ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Diana Rossini and other reporters are now reporting that Dak Prescott, the quote-unquote holdup for a deal for him, and I knew Jerry would be pressured to do this because in the end, he could have done it months ago. He could have done it a year ago. He doesn't want to, but I think public pressure is like getting to them to get a deal done. And the reality of this is just what top quarterbacks make, even if your quarterback's not the top quarterback, deal with it, is that he has to do it. And where Dak is holding their feet to the fire now, apparently, according to Rossini and others, is the length of the deal. So Jerry's probably trying to get how short of a deal can I get done here at $60 million a year? And Dak's pulling probably wants 5 years. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm betting Jerry wants the 3 years to negotiate it to 4 at most. And Dak's going
and out
5.
After 3 years.
Yeah.
And out.
And Dak's going 5, take it or leave it.
Because he knows if he hits the open market that he will.
Yes.
A quarterback poor team will do it. Now, he won't be the quarterback of the Cowboys, and only he can answer the question, how much does that part matter to him? Because I do think it's a big deal to be the quarterback of the Cowboys, and it's a bigger deal. I mean, I think all the NFL teams are a big deal to be the quarterback of, but it's the biggest deal to be the quarterback of them. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
So how much does it matter to him to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and how much is he willing to sacrifice on the other side, which is a year or two on a deal? And if I'm him and his agent, that's an interesting question, because if Jerry's hard line is, I'll give you 3 guaranteed basically, and a 4th that we can get out of, and they're saying we want 4 guaranteed with a 5th or 5 guaranteed because that's just the going rate. Well, they have to make a decision. Do you want to wear the star on your helmet for your whole career or not? And that's the question they have to answer to get it done.
Well, and the other side of this too is, once again, I feel like I need to bring it up every time. When the new league year starts, a $40 million dead cap hits their cap, no matter what happens. And so I think this is Dak and the agent going, play chicken with us, because once the new year opens, whether we sign with you or not, that $40 million hits the cap and you can't use it on anything else. And so I think that's the biggest factor here, is this is Dak and his agent going, we have you over the barrel already for $40 million on the most important number in the NFL. Take it or leave it. And this is going to be one of those situations where if Jerry doesn't do it, I think he's really going to get raked over the coals for it. And to your point of, is it important to be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback? I say yes, but I also think there's kind of an expiration date on it. Like, he's been it long enough. You get the guaranteed money. He's already got some of the endorsement deals. People know who he is. Look at Kirk. Kirk's the same way. Like, he played for the Redskins, the Vikings, now the Falcons. He's got endorsement deals too. Like, I don't know. I think these come along, and I know it's different.
I think it depends where he would go. I do.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're the Cowboys quarterback, if you then go to, and it wouldn't be Jacksonville, but I'll just use it as an example. If you go from that to Jacksonville, there is a perception that it's just kind of a downgrade.
Sure.
And I think that's the hard part. Like, when Carr went from the Raiders to the Saints, it feels sideways, and the Raiders hadn't won anything. And they hadn't won anything in a long time. And I know the Cowboys haven't won anything in a long time, but there's still a massive brand, if not still the biggest brand. And being the quarterback for them is different than being the quarterback for the Cardinals. It just is. So that's the part of it that's different. Like, for Kirk, well, they just didn't want him here. I mean, like, that's just a different story. I just think they just didn't like. This is different than what's going on with Dak. I think Jerry wants him there at a price. I don't think he wants him there at the price and that length. And he wants to dictate the terms. And I don't blame him, actually, that he doesn't want to get tied into a deal where he's a depreciating asset. Like Dak's over 30 now. So like a depreciating asset, they still haven't won anything with him. You know, I'll hear out Jerry on, I'm in my 80s. Do I want to tie myself to this guy at $60 million a year? And I'll hear him out on that. But the reality is this is just what top quarterbacks get paid. We've seen this coming for a very long time. It's like he doesn't want to live in the reality of the market pricing. And honestly, I think he ought to just, if this is what it is, he ought to just move on and live with it and explain himself on the other side that he just didn't want to pay that price and either go draft a quarterback or go find a different one on the open market. But they're sitting in an in-between that has never made sense, which is why he gets so much criticism for it. You either want to do it or you don't. And he seems to be toggling in the, I don't want to let him go, but I want to get him on my terms, but my terms aren't his terms. And I think they ought to play out the year and let him go if this is how he feels about it. But I'm not surprised that it's ramping up to a deal again, because there's just been so much public pressure on him where people are basically asking him, have you lost your fastball? Do you know what you're doing anymore? And his response to that is to get deals done to try to prove everybody wrong, even if they're deals he didn't want to do. So I think they're stuck in a weird spot right now.
I think the difference here, though, is like you were mentioning, being the quarterback of the Cowboys. Look at who's going to need a quarterback next year, most likely. You have the Raiders, who you mentioned, which they're not the Cowboys, but that's a premier destination. If you become...
Saints might want to move away from Carr and want a quarterback for sure.
You go to Pittsburgh, being the Steelers quarterback. I would say arguably top 5, spotlight, right?
If Bryce Young stinks this year, Carolina will look for a quarterback, and Tepper pays anything.
Correct. And then the other two is New York. The Jets, we don't know if Rodgers is going to return next year.
Correct.
And then we know that they hate Daniel Jones. You could have both New York teams going after him. So I'm just saying there are comparable locations. It's not the Cowboys, but 4 or 5 very good premier destination places.
Frankly, if like Hurts has a bad year, and I don't expect it, but if Hurts has a really bad year for some reason, Roseman moves away from things quickly. Like there will be no lack of teams that want him. Like there's going to be 5 to 10 teams that will look at him as a massive upgrade, and they'll pay the price to get him. So it's not that it'll be a lack of, but they won't be the Cowboys. And that's why I think it would matter where he goes next. So like if he goes to the Giants, well, like that's a big deal going to New York. If he goes to, again, Jacksonville, does it get perceived that way as, is it a downgrade? And that's the hard part, I think, that he walks into. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram watches the show. He's been 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bram watches the show. He's been 630 Sports Capital. The WNBA season has taken a turn, and it's going to get lost because football's back. But Caitlin Clark's team is in the playoffs now. They started, I wrote it down, 0-5 and 1-8. They are now 17-16. Caitlin Clark leads the league in assists. Okay. Leads the league in assists. She's second in threes and 9th in points overall. So all you haters, you were wrong by a lot. And I think going back to the beginning of the year when they hazed her and said all these terrible things and just didn't want to give her any due or didn't want to roll out a red carpet for her, it's all coming back to bite them. And I want you to listen to Charles Barkley, who went on with Bill Simmons on The Ringer, and I thought summed it up the way I kind of feel about it and felt about it from the get-go, which was I did not understand why they were treating her this way early when all the ticket sales and all the exposure and everything was happening for the benefit of the league, and they just couldn't handle it. And here's Charles on that.
These ladies, and I'm a WNBA fan, they cannot have this Caitlin Clark thing up any worse if they tried. People believe what we say on television. just because people don't like you or your personality, they can't get on TV and slander you. It's just total bullshit. This girl is incredible. The number of attention, eyeballs she's brought to college and the pros, and for these women to have this petty jealousness, you say to yourself, damn, what is going on here? And the thing I love about her, she never says a word. But these ladies who I love and respect their game, they couldn't have this thing up any worse. There's been so much negativity, and a lot of it is just petty jealousness.
100%. Like 100%. I saw this the first 3 weeks of this when all the attention was on it because nothing else was going on, and she was in the news cycles. And these other players, it was obvious jealousy. Just, why does she get all this attention? I'm going to show you. And there was the code reds were out for her. And I was like, you idiots. Like, I don't care what you think of her, whether you think she sucks or whatever it is, let it play out on the court. But don't do this, because all you're doing is shining a light on how petty your league is. And you have forgotten that the vast majority of us haven't paid a lick of attention to you guys. And now you finally have it. And you have all of us looking. And what are you doing? You're acting like children around her. And now look who got the last laugh. Leads the league in assists, second in threes, and her team went from 1-8 to the playoffs. Wow.
She also had her, I don't know if it was the last matchup, but it was her last game against Angel Reese in the Sky. She scored 31 points, which is ridiculous in the WNBA. And I actually think I roll on a couple different sides on this, but one, I didn't have a problem with the welcome to the league moments. I think every league does that. Okay. I don't think that's just the WNBA.
A couple of them were a little much, though.
I agree.
And that's why it got national attention, because they were cheap shotting her.
I 100% agree. But what I actually had a bigger problem with, and Charles is right with what he was saying, was why they were downplaying her was just the most ridiculous thing you could have done. You could have said it in a million different ways. We've covered sports for how long? Where you just say, oh yeah, I'm excited to play against her. She's an exciting player. And instead it was, oh, well, she's got to remember who came before her and all of this and whatever. No offense. You have all these new eyeballs. Show them who you are while you're playing against her. You don't have to do this downplaying of somebody's talent. And that's where they made the mistake. You know, he's right.
Like, obviously, like, I was alive when this happened. I'm not old enough to really remember. But the NBA was nothing until Magic and Larry really showed up. Like, it was a mild big deal. Their games were on tape delay. Like, there was rival leagues, in the 70s against them. Some of the stars played in those rival leagues against them. And Magic and Larry, and then ultimately Michael Jordan, really changed everything. But this would be akin to Magic. I don't remember Magic and Larry coming in and people telling stories about how in the 70s cheap shotted them and said they weren't very good and they should, respect Bill Russell and Oscar Robertson. Like, that's what happened to her. And sorry, she's the one who got everybody's attention, but not sorry. And she's doing you a service. Like, golf was not the same after Tiger Woods joined it. Golf had been around for hundreds of years and had a million stars, but the financial impact, the engagement impact, the business impact of him showing up for whatever reason initially was what it was. And I don't remember golfers recoiling to it and acting like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to us, or we're going to make you prove it and haze the guy. No, they welcomed him in and appreciated the attention. I'm with Charles here. And it felt this way from the get-go. You're getting this wrong. If she fails on the court, she fails. If she's a flash if she's Michelle Wee, she shows up, it doesn't change everything. That will just happen. But to sit there and basically ask the cameras to stop pointing in her direction when all she's doing is lifting the whole thing up was a mistake. And now she's making you all look like foolish, petty idiots because it turns out she is that. Like that's the dumbest part about the whole thing is it took her one season to figure out how to be the level people said she could be when the people in this league were trying to tell us she wasn't all that. It's nuts. The whole thing's nuts.
Well, and what's funny too is there was the factor as well of she has said everything right, like Charles said, but like you have Angel Reese talking trash, saying she might be the villain or whatever, like saying herself is the villain. Whereas Clark has done the complete opposite. It's just gone full neutral, not said a word about it either. That's the other thing I don't really understand about this. Clark never asked for the smoke, yet she got the smoke. And like that's what I think the weirdest thing with all this is this wasn't like some pest in the NHL like Brad Marchand coming in where he kind of deserves it. This is just a player that was existing and got all of the smoke because of the media attention. And I don't understand why the players didn't kind of reel themselves in on all of that.
She didn't come in and try to bait it. Never did. She's Senator Clark. Like she came in. She is a test case of media relations when you're a star of how to handle the media. And she has not once buckled or said a thing that was controversial or baited other players. She lets all of her play do the talking. And it seems to have just infuriated everybody. And it's confusing to me.
Yeah.
I can't wait for 30. Why does every basketball player hate Caitlin Clark when the world loves her? Like, I don't understand it.
Right.
Don't understand it. And maybe next year, when I'm assuming the interest level will rise because she's really good, like maybe they'll all back off a little bit and start treating her with some respect and turn it into the competition it should be. Because I'm with Chuck. I felt this way from the get-go. This was off from the start. I never understood why, and it felt petty and based in jealousy. And I don't know why you would be jealous of something like that. It's insane.
The other factor here is what is going to happen as well is she now is hinging, or the other, not saying that all of the other players in the league's success is hinging on her, but she's now a part of the group. So she needs to succeed for everyone to succeed. And guess what? The Olympics are 4 years away in LA. Guess who's going to be the centerpiece of women's basketball in the next 4 years? It's her. So they're all going to be very smart and wise up and start propping her up again because they all know she's about to make them a lot of money in a new TV deal or whatever else is going on down the pipeline too. They're all going to wise up.
That's right. They're going to have to. All right. That'll do it for today. We'll preview the season tomorrow. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.